back to the best division in football with your boys Awthentik and The Beard. Season 5. Can y'all believe the football season is already here? I really can't believe it. It flew by. It seems like I was just talking to y'all about the Giants' playoff loss this past season, and here we are. We've got 2023, and we're all set. We're ready to go, man. We're just 2 days away from a real game now. And today we're going to be doing some stat and some record predictions going around the NFC East. Just want to kind of recap what happened last season here. Philadelphia won the division with a 14-3 record before losing to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Thank God, because they would have had some major bragging rights going throughout this year if they would have won that Super Bowl. I see my Giants family on Twitter. They still got something to cling on to, and that's a Philadelphia loss in the Super Bowl. The Cowboys, who finished 12-5 for the second straight season, were bounced from the playoffs by the San Francisco 49ers. They had beat the Bucs in the wild card round right before that. A lot of people like to kind of dismiss that. I'm hearing people on Twitter talking about Dak Prescott can't win a playoff game. Well, the Cowboys did win a playoff game last year before they got bounced by the 49ers. And our New York Giants finished the season at 9-7-1. Won our first playoff game since 2011. God damn, that's a long time ago, man. 2011, bro, I was like just entering my 30s. Like, that's kind of crazy. But also the Commanders, they, didn't get to the playoffs. Not too bad, but had a pretty decent season at 500, sitting at 8-1. And I know all of their fan base is extremely happy about being under new ownership this year. So they feel like they got fresh legs up underneath the dinner table. But I'm about to bring in the best co-host in the country to tell y'all why or why not the Washington Commanders are actually going to be eating this year or not. We will see. The Beard is in the building. What's poppin', fam?
It feels absolutely amazing to be right here, right now. I'm excited. You said it best. Football in 2 days? Real football. I mean, I've been watching Notre Dame do their thing for the first couple of weeks of the college football season. But, NFL is here. And listen, the air in D.C. right now, it's beautiful.
I was going to say it's muggy as a mug.
Yeah, I mean, it's super hot today. It's like 96 degrees outside right now. But, I mean, the energy is unbelievable right now. We have already sold out for week 1. Listen, you talking about last time you guys won a playoff game. I mean, I can't even tell you the last time we sold out a game.
I noticed y'all making a big deal about that. Like, I see Commanders fans like acting like that's a win. Like, we sold out our first opening game, man.
I'm not making it sound like a win. I'm just saying that the energy is back. Obviously, we had 2 of the biggest offseason moves, in the NFL this year. So,
what were those moves we talk about here?
Oh, well, Dan Snyder is absolutely finally gone. That's number
that
one.
That kind of offseason move. Okay, I get you. I was puzzled there for a second.
Eric Bieniemy.
I got you. I know that people are very excited about Eric Bieniemy, but it has been about 3 years since this guy was supposed to be getting a head coaching job. I'm not sitting here, degrading what he's going to bring as far as an offensive scheme to the Washington Commanders, but y'all seem like y'all are just extremely happy, man. Fat boys with a cake, pretty much. And I don't know if y'all going to be eating this year. I mean, the division's looking kind of tough this year. But how you feel like, as far as all y'all offseason moves from Sam Howell getting a starting job, for those of y'all that didn't know, me and The Beard went out to the Commanders camp. We got to see Sam Howell on the first day of camp. And I was somebody who came into the season kind of not sold on Sam Howell, but seeing it live in person there at camp, I was like, okay, this kid can definitely spin the football. He can definitely throw it. You see a guy who's a tick above what Jacoby Brissett, I think, was going to bring to the Washington Commanders. But what's your thoughts on that with Sam Howell and the rest of the moves y'all made roster-wise, not management or front office-wise with Washington?
So as far as Sam Howell goes, I think the level of excitement is there. Obviously there's going to be some hesitation because he's only played one NFL game. If I was to rank the quarterbacks in the division, he would still be number 4 because he's only played one game. But I think to go off of the way he performed in that game against Dallas, a lot of people kind of forget that Dallas was actually playing for something, in that game. It wasn't like they were resting their starters or anything like that. They were playing for something. So to see the way that he performed in that game and then the transition moving into the offseason from, OTAs and training camp to the preseason game, which you and I both attended. Big shout out to Chris Peace, who was with us in that. And congratulations on the wedding, my friend. Big shout out to Chris Peace
one time in the
for the $4.99 super chat. Authentic and The Beard, the best show not on TV. Let's get it. Appreciate you, Chris, as always, my guy. He got a shirt for me that we might pull out at some point this season. We'll have to wait and see.
You got to pull that shirt out. Yeah, that was hilarious. So shout out to Chris Peace for the tickets, but, man, for two Commanders games, actually.
Yeah, and I think that it started to just kept rising. You know, like I said, that from that moment in the Dallas Cowboys game to, you know, the way that he ended the preseason, he looked fantastic in the preseason. So definitely very, very excited about Sam Howell. I think, you know, some of the draft picks as far as Emmanuel Forbes, I feel like that there's a lot of excitement about him because we have been so bad about forcing turnovers, you know, in recent years, that to get somebody who's such a ball hawk and the potential for him, I think is very important. So there's some excitement. Obviously, you know, we're a little bit cautiously optimistic about the offensive line right now because that's going to be one of the big issues. But, you know, we did make some moves. We got your guy, Nick Gates, you know, who's already shown that he's going to be throwing people around, whether it's legally or illegally. So big shout out.
I love that. I'll call it a touchdown celebration when he shoved the homie in the end zone. That's Nick Gates for you, man. He's feisty.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's just there wasn't anything like crazy splash wise, in my opinion, obviously, as far as, you know, offseason moves go. But I think in a weird way, it's kind of good. And that's why I mentioned Eric Bieniemy, because I think that's the biggest offseason move that this franchise has made. And that's what's got me so excited about this, you know, upcoming season. And obviously, you know, the upgrade, whether it's Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, The Beard, or Authentic, it's an upgrade from Taylor Heineke. And I think
you get Authentic out there. It's definitely an upgrade. I'm out here doing things.
So I think that's really what's got me the most excited. And I mean, listen, I've been on Twitter all off season, and I feel like every other week I have to compliment you and your team on your off season moves. You know, we talked about, you know, the two biggest offseason moves, in my opinion, with Dan Snyder and Eric Bieniemy. But to me, the other one that stands out across the entire league is the New York Giants getting Darren Waller. So you have to tell me what you think about that.
I mean, I love that move. We needed a weapon like that, you know, and I don't think it's the traditional weapon that most fans were looking for. You know, we were probably trying to get a wide receiver one here. I was one who was extremely high on trying to bring in a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. You hear about Mike Evans, you know, some trade talks with Mike Evans. I would have brought in a receiver like that as well. But, you know, it might not align, you know, with the youth that's on this team. There's so many wide receivers already that are very young. We got a couple of OGs in the room with Sterling Shepard. They brought in Cole Beasley. I like all the moves. I do still have a few concerns. I'll talk about the concerns after I talk about the moves that I do like. But drafting Jalen Hyatt, I think, could also be one of the biggest moves of the offseason. You know, I'm surprised that a guy like that, you know, fell to the third round in the draft with that kind of speed. You know, it seems with defenses playing more too high safety nowadays, every team needs a guy like that. And I remember when we left camp from Washington, I tweeted out a couple of tweets and whatnot, and I said, you know, the one thing that I felt like Washington was lacking was like a real burner. And people were coming at me with 40 times and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, you guys got fast wide receivers and all, but I'm talking about a guy that, like, when he runs that seam route down the middle of the field, that the safeties are really going to be paying attention to him. So I think Jalen Hyatt's definitely going to be that. I'm probably the first person on record in all of Giants YouTube to say that I think that Jalen Hyatt can be a wide receiver one for this team. I said it back in May. I still believe in that. I don't know if it'll begin the season quite like that, but I do see this guy maybe week 4, week 5 being a major threat for our team. And Darren Waller, like you talked about, I really like that move. The question with Darren Waller becomes health. Obviously, he's had 2 seasons here where he hasn't been able to finish every one of those games in the season. But I do like the move, and I think for Daniel Jones, he already showed you that he can kind of exploit tight end matchups already. We did it last year with Daniel Bellinger a ton, and you should see a lot of 12 personnel this year with both of them on the field, with Bellinger and with Waller on the field. So I'm happy about that. I like the signing of Paris Campbell out of free agency. I think Paris Campbell can come in here. I've talked about this, and shout out to everybody who supported the videos that we dropped in the offseason, the short 2 minutes that we were doing for those videos and whatnot. But I talked about Paris Campbell being a guy who, you know, he just needs to come in and fill those shoes of Richie James. And some Giants fans might look at that and frown on that and go, what do you mean? Like, it's Richie James, you know, the same guy that they were calling a Walmart worker or a Home Depot worker last season, you know, but he did have the highest catch rate of any wide receiver in the league of over 50 targets. So Richie James was doing some good things on the field. I know about the 2 punt returns against Seattle kind of leave a bad taste in people's mouths here, but I think they're not the smallest shoes to fill. You know, Paris Campbell cannot come in here and be a regression from what we saw from Richie James last year. I need to see him come out here and be better than that, score more touchdowns, even though James got 2 of his touchdowns in garbage time. I think he ended the season with 3 or 4 touchdowns. So I'm looking for Paris Campbell to step it up and be a better version of Richie James. We're getting Wan'Dale Robinson back off the knee injury. So the weapons are aligning now. I think that, with the contract situation with Daniel Jones, what the Giants did here is pretty much reset the rookie clock for Daniel Jones. They're giving him another 3 years to just redo this thing all over again and kind of just wipe clean, give him a clean slate of what happened with Dave Gettleman and put the weapons around him. Because I think now Giants fans who are invested in the quarterback and have been invested in the quarterback, we don't got no excuses now unless this whole team goes out here like the 2017 team and gets hurt. But I like the moves as far as weapons go. We got speed out there. We've got talent out there. We even signed your boy Cam Sims just recently to the practice squad. Yeah, and, we got Cole Beasley, who was on the practice squad as well, but they had to put him on the IR. So I think one of those guys might be able to see their way to the 53-man roster and be able to get some snaps. I like Cam Sims. He's been a guy who can make the spectacular catch. Reminds me of myself. I always tell people this on the stream. Like, and when I played baseball, when I played center field, our coach Dave, Joey and Kenny's father, he used to always tell me, like, bro, you make those spectacular catches look easy, but when you get the routine pop fly, you shaking in your boots, bro. And that's definitely facts. But I think Cam Sims could come in here and be a, like a Isaiah Hodgins B, or junior type of role, if he does get on the field. Defensively, I love the Deonte Banks signing. Shout out to Coach Loxley. One time I'm going to be up there at the Maryland game on September 9th, checking them out on the sidelines. Going to be able to bring my camera. Shout out to Chaz for plugging me with that. But I like that. Ashawn Robinson, Bobby O. Isaiah Simmons was a great signing. I don't know if it's going to pan out, but it's still a great signing. I think as Giants fans, we might have been a little too pumped for that, but I think the reason why we are pumped about that is because we know what Wink Martindale can do with those kind of players that are Swiss Army knife type of style. So I love the moves. I think Joe Shane is out here just doing everything in his power to upgrade this roster with limited funds. They've restructured Daniel Jones' contract to even get a little bit more funds on the books. A lot of people were thinking maybe that was to bring in another weapon, but seems to be that that's just to get our 53-man roster on the field. I'm digging the moves, but the one place of concern for me it's been a place of concern since we started the podcast. In 2019, I said, Dave Gettleman, man, he's going to bring in those hog mollies. And 2019 went by. We had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. 2020, I'm like, all right, he's going to get the hog mollies in there, okay? And strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, and then Dave Gettleman, you're out here. Yeah. All right? So Joe Shane's out here trying to rebuild this offensive line. It's relatively the same unit outside of John Michael Schmitz at center. We're hoping Evan Neal could come back, have a bounce-back season here. What we saw in the preseason was not, leaning towards good, but I've been tweeting this out all year. Evan Neal, you got to be the man of the year. I've been putting a picture of my man Schoolboy Q with 2 ass cheeks right on the side, almost like a Sir Mix-a-Lot video. And I'm saying, Evan Neal, this got to be you, bro. You got to go out here, and you got to put that right side of that offensive line on your back and handle business. Now, there are some people that have been saying that he's like the X factor, and there's no way I'm going to sit here and say, and me and my homies in my group chat always talk about this, I can't say a right tackle in the NFL is going to be the X factor. It can't be. We have a great solidified bookend left tackle with Andrew Thomas, but Mark Lewinsky and Ben Bredesen in the interior, I think there's some question marks there, starting with Mark Lewinsky. But I think Ben Bredesen's going to be able to hold it down. We'll see if Ezeudu can get on the field as well, maybe, lend his hand to this offensive line. But I think it's good enough. We got enough weapons here to be able to go back to the drawing board after the loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, the dog walking that we had in the divisional round, and be able to at least try to come back here and try to compete and try to make those games at least a little bit closer, moving into this year. And I'm excited. We do this every year, and there's a bit of just like optimism that kicks in at the beginning of the year. Last year I was telling Tennessee Titans fans I ain't scared of Derrick Henry, and things happened to work out fairly well for us. We won the game. It did. Derrick Henry didn't do that great, so I look like I know what I'm talking about, but really I was just going off faith on a limb there. And I think this year I'm coming in with a little bit more of tempered expectations, and I want my team to exceed where I'm thinking they are at right now, so that by the time we get to December and January, we're playing some football, in the playoffs, and they're surprising me a bit. I don't want to be that guy that sets the bar too high. I know I always talk about keep raising that bar over here. When it comes to the Giants here at the beginning of the year, I kind of lowered the bar a little bit. So
the bar has been raised for sure, and there's a lot of people here that are definitely excited. Big shout out to Word. We back for the $19.99 $19.99, $19.99. I said
$19.99.
Appreciate you,
Shout out to Word, man. We appreciate that, brother.
Big shout out to Stephen Lilly checking us out from across the pond with the £5 super chat. Says, hiya, boys. Good to see you back and super excited for this season and hoping we can get a W for both our teams this week. Let's go, Giants.
I'm hoping for the upset from the Cardinals.
Of course you are. Number 9.
Clayton Tune about to go out there and, he about to do some things.
Oh, man, listen, we're going to save that for Thursday.
Facts.
Big shout out to Death File Picker, my guy Mike in the building for the $5 super chat. Says, you heard it here for the 11th time. It's our year. Go Cowboys.
A 50-11. Did you lend him that 50-11?
I did.
That's how you be talking, you know?
And big shout out to
wait a minute, before you move on from Death Pile, I'm just, it's the beginning of the year. I got to get some takes out there. I'm with you on this, bro. I think it's y'all year. I think the Cowboys going to make their way to the Super Bowl. If not, they're going to be in that championship game.
Oh, man. You want to say it one more time?
No.
Okay. All right.
Somebody might have just tuned in, tried to clip me up, put me on Twitter. No.
Big shout out to my guy Keith. Vintage Sport Flips. If you guys aren't following Vintage Sport Flips on YouTube, definitely give him a follow. He donated a bunch of awesome prizes sponsored for the trivia giveaways last season. So big shout out to my guy Keith. He says, go Birds. I think the NFC East will be a beast this year across the board, though.
Okay.
It's gonna be a good year, I think, for some teams, maybe more so than other. But big shout out to our guy Zach G in the building for the $1.99 super chat. Says the easiest catches are the hardest ones to make.
That's a fact, man. That's a fact. Pop fly right in the sun. You got to wait on it. You like, I got this. You just trying to remind yourself. I got it. Oh, God damn it.
But big shout out to everybody in the chat. We appreciate y'all rocking with us. It is great to be back. Oh, my guy, New York Giant Mason.
What's poppin', Mason?
$4.99 super chat says Dave Gettleman's hog mollies are like Kaiser Sose. No one's ever seen them.
This is facts.
Bars.
This is facts. This is definitely facts. Shout out to Mason one time in the building, man. Appreciate you pulling up, my guy. All right, Beard, you ready to move into this? So we're going to start with the record predictions first. We're not going to go through every game on the schedule, but we are going to break down our hierarchy of who we think which team will be first, second, third, and fourth place. You better not have my team in fourth place. I'm gonna have some smoke for you if you got my team in fourth place. But we're gonna start with the Beard one time. We'll let him get his out the way, and then I'll go to mine. Let's get right to it, y'all. All right, Mr. Beard himself. I just seeing this graphic already. Shout out to the graphics department one time.
Shout out to the graphics department.
I'm not liking what they cooked up here for you here. They even got a little beard right there on the watch. And look at the little beard right there, man. Trimmed up real nice, man. Explain to the people what this Dallas at the bottom of the division, huh, man? All right. So it's your show. It's your show from here on.
Okay, so obviously I am a little bit, I'm not being biased here, okay? I'm trying my best to be realistic because that's what we do here at Awthentik and The Beard, But listen, for me, I feel like the Cowboys are the biggest wild card of the bunch, okay? Because I think, they can be good, but they just the consistency has not been there for me on Dallas, okay? Now, the Eagles,
even with the 2 12-5 seasons back to back?
Even with the 2 Now, listen, I always am a little bit lower on Dallas because they're Dallas, okay? So I'm allowed to do that, okay?
Is that hate? Is that, I know the young kids on Twitter, they like to call me a hater when I talk negative on another team. Is that what that is? Is it the hater in you?
I don't know if it's necessarily the hater in me. It's the non-believer in me. I'm just not a believer in Dallas yet. And I want to be. I do. I want to believe in them because I seen
That's
Dak. I've seen Dak at his best. And I think he's going to be the key point here for the Dallas Cowboys. I really, really do. If Dak can be top 5 Dak, then
that
the
exists?
Cowboys.
There's a top 5 deck.
There's a top 5 capability inside that man. Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. Can he stay on the field? Even though Cooper Rush came in last year and did a fantastic job as a backup quarterback, because I believe amongst many others, was like, oh, that's the Cowboys season is over. It was like
weeks
week
into
2,
the season,
right?
It was all of us. We were like, yeah, it's over. And they ended up winning 12 games.
So for the fact that they were able to do that, now I do want to preface this whole thing here with the fact that the schedule for the NFC East this year is absolutely brutal, okay? Now, I think the Eagles and the Giants are probably going to be the closest to realistic expectations on records here. I think Dallas and Washington are probably the ones that might maybe stick out a little bit, okay? Now, Dallas, I'm gonna go over quickly their losses, okay? Because in the way I do this schedule, I don't think any team's ever really gonna sweep a guy, okay? So I think that I'm gonna go. Dallas goes. They lose to Washington and the Giants and the Eagles. They have one loss to each one of those teams, okay? So that's gonna give them their 3 losses right there. Then the other losses that they're gonna face are gonna be the New York Jets. I think the New York Jets might sweep the NFC East this year. I think that's something I'm kind of looking at as an ongoing theme right here. Is I'm gonna think that they're going to sweep every team in the NFC East. So that's going to be the first loss for the Cowboys outside of the division, along with San Francisco, Buffalo, Miami, the Chargers,
Buffalo, Miami, the Chargers. Okay,
and the one that I think that could go either way. I mean, obviously, all these games could go either way, but the one I think that I'm choosing that could go either way would be the Detroit Lions. And I think if they played the Lions earlier in the season, then I would have probably picked Dallas more so than towards the end of the season. But towards the end of the season, I think, they'll have James Williams back, and I think that that's going to be a huge help for the Lions offense, obviously, after the 6-game suspension. So I think that that's going to be a little bit of a reasoning for why I'm going to pick them to lose to Detroit. I just think that Detroit's going to be a better team later in the season than earlier in the season. Now, the New York Giants, I think, and let me say this also. The Dallas Cowboys have improved in certain areas, right? Obviously, Brandon Cooks at wide receiver is a huge addition. I know both of us have been big Brandon Cooks fans, for a while now. He's a guy that we've talked about, I feel like, multiple times on.
My homie in our group chat said that Brandon Cooks is going to be the number 3 wide receiver over there. I was like, bro, no, you might want to keep your eyes on wide receivers, because Brandon Cooks is a wide receiver 1, but he's going to be 2 over there in Dallas.
All he does is produce. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is either. I think that's something that a lot of people, don't necessarily pay attention to. And Dak might be one of the better quarterbacks that he's played with, in
Cooks
a long
has
time.
6 1,000-yard seasons out of 9 seasons in the NFL.
That's so underrated as a wide receiver right there.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously Stephon Gilmore, the addition there, we'll see what level he's going to be playing at this year, I don't want to say he's like, like a Jalen Ramsey kind of, like they're that good. But then out of nowhere, and they switch teams a couple of times, and then is it just his name, or is he actually producing like he'll produce at the top?
And
of the time?
You got to look at what Dallas had at cornerback too late in the year. Remember, they had 2 cornerbacks get injured and out for the rest of the season late in the year. So they were definitely dealing with scraps. Gilmore's definitely going to be an upgrade over there. I also think they're going to have an upgrade addition by subtraction with Zeke Elliott, because now you can just focus on getting Tony Pollard the ball.
Yeah, and
you got Deuce Vaughn over there who can break big plays as well.
I'm a Pollard guy. So 8-9 might be a little, harsh. Okay, but I'm gonna stick with 8-9.
I definitely think that's harsh.
Okay, now the New York Giants, I feel like also obviously made some upgrades. A lot of that we talked about, as we open this show. And I think that, there's some losses there. Obviously, the divisional losses, I'm going to give them 3 divisional losses. So that leaves them with 5 other losses that I think the Giants are going to have this season. Those are going to be San Francisco. It's going to be Miami, Buffalo, the Jets, and the Saints. Okay, so
all reasonable. I think they can handle the Saints.
I think the AFC East is going to give us some problems as a division. That's probably like the theme I'm going along. And as I go through the Giants and the Cowboys, and I get to, my Washington Commanders, I'm starting to realize that I was a little bit more lenient with the Washington Commanders as far as the AFC East competition than the other teams. And
Oh yeah, when I got your email with the predictions and forwarded over to the graphics department, the graphics department.
Yeah.
I looked and I was like, man, he's being real kind to his Washington Commanders. You would think after a season like y'all had last year, where your roster's not that much revamped. I mean, you brought in Forbes in the draft, a couple other pieces here and there, but it's relatively the same roster. I think of all the teams in the NFC East, y'all probably made the least amount of moves.
100%. There's no question about it. We definitely made the least amount of moves. I think I'm personally banking on a couple of factors here for the Washington Commanders. One of them, obviously, you've heard me mention it already multiple times, and you will probably hear me mention it for multiple times throughout the year, and that's Eric Bieniemy. The difference in that offense between Scott Turner and Eric Bieniemy is going to be so dramatically different and so obvious by the on-field production that I cannot ignore that as that being an X factor. Okay,
It should sound good.
And then obviously, like I said, the air here is beautiful right now. This is like, how I talk about sometimes about the road maps, right? This is like, and to talk about the going into the cupboards in the kitchen and grabbing out the Old Bay and the pepper and the curry and all that.
Paprika.
And, put paprika, putting it all in the pot. Mixing it up, it's just the recipe is here. Like new ownership, the fan base is re-energized. We finally have a quarterback that can throw the ball, far and accurate. Allegedly. Yes, I'll give you that. He's got some mobility as well. I feel like that the recipe is there for Washington to succeed. Now listen, this is best case scenario. Big shout out to Michael R with the $2 super chat. Says Beard, a gold out of 10 Prism DJ or a Howell rookie card. Right now, market value, Sam Howell probably has the better market value on that card than Daniel Jones. But I will say Daniel Jones cards are also on the rise as well because of the possible potential year that he has, adding the weapons that team has added for him, and then obviously signing the big contract always helps with value as well. But right now, currently, right this second, until the games are played, Sam Howell's Prism rookie card gold out of 10 is worth more than Daniel Jones.
Spike don't care.
Oh, my bad.
Big shout out to Zach G for the $4.99 super chat. Says the Giants have tough opening schedule because 5 out of 6 games are at 4:05 or primetime games. And the Giants' record in prime time is not so good.
That's a damn fact right there. I appreciate Zach G pulling up with that information because I didn't really put all that together, man. But yeah, primetime games is not a good look for Daniel Jones. I want to say he's 1-11 in primetime games, but this is a new unit. We got new weapons around it. Maybe we can kind of inch a little bit closer to getting that number right around 500, man, because that 1-11 is not a good look.
Yeah, that would definitely be a huge help. Big shout out to our guy, Paulie. The Water Boys are in the building. My guy, Gunny Man, with a $5 super chat, says Trey Lance will be playing at the end of the season, and Fred Flintstone will be fired. Listen,
no, sir.
I love you, Paulie. And I love Trey Lance's move for the Dallas Cowboys in the long run, but I don't foresee him being in that situation unless it's a San Francisco 49ers sort of situation from last year, where it's just everybody's going down, dropping like flies.
He's not ready. Even if people start dropping like flies, you're going to need a true Willie Beeman situation where Cap Rooney goes down and then the backup comes in and he goes down. And then they still might not think about playing Trey Lance. Go and look at his tape. Study his preseason tape from this past season. Study all his games that he played in last season as the starter. I believe it was 2 starts. This guy is missing the most basic of basic reads in the NFL right now. I don't think it'll be anytime soon we're going to see Trey Lance on a football field as a starter for an NFL team. Not right now.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him. I think I'm going to agree with Awthentik on that one, but I am a Trey Lance believer. I just don't think it's anytime soon. Okay,
I find it very contradicting that you're not a believer in the Cowboys, but you're a believer in Trey Lance.
I'm a believer in Trey Lance as a project, as a down the line sort of situation.
It's the kind of project where, I can remember back in the day, I wait to the last minute science project, ready to be due in the next day. Mm-hmm. And I tell my mom, I need to go to the store and get this and that. I need poster board, right? Mm-hmm. She go get me a U-Haul box, cut it into a square. Yeah. That's the kind you talking about right there. That's the kind you talking about.
Do they still make people do the threefold board project?
I would imagine. I'm sure they still making volcanoes with the cardboard background, poster board background. I'm sure.
Big shout out to Stefan for the $4.99 super chat. Big shout out. Daniel Jones is Cinderella at the start of the fourth quarter. He turns into a pumpkin. No faith in your boy.
I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, we saw a lot of fourth quarter Daniel Jones last year, right? Green Bay, fourth quarter Daniel Jones showed up. Jacksonville, fourth quarter Daniel Jones showed up. Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs, he showed up all four quarters. So I think it's in him. He has the capability to do so. But this year, you got a lot riding on this year. He's got the weapons around him now. It's no more Daniel Jones is dragging this team into the playoffs type of thing. You got everything you need around you outside of a great offensive line. But I don't think we can look at quarterback situations around the NFL like this. Okay, we got to check off left tackle, perfect, left guard. But we can't do it like that, right? Every team is going to have some deficiencies. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they're lacking wide receivers. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals, they're lacking offensive line. You look at the Buffalo Bills, they ain't got jack except my man Josh Allen over there and Stephon Diggs, and that's really it. So I think that you got to have certain pieces, obviously, but now we got Daniel Jones in an offense, second year in the offense too here, fifth year you're entering. So no more excuses here. I don't know about turning into a pumpkin, but as far as when the lights are bright, Daniel Jones has not showed up on a regular occasion for sure.
Yeah, he's got one primetime win, right?
Yeah, 1-11. Yep.
Yeah. So big shout out to Stefan. We appreciate the super chat.
Oh, we got two more real quick. Shout out.
Paulie with the $2 super chat says, bruh, Jerry can't help himself.
Couldn't help himself. He ain't even holler at the coach. He ain't even say, hey, Mike, I'm about to get him. He just said, hey, we got a new player. His name is Lance. He going to be in the locker room. Figure out what you're going to do with him. Extremely wild. Extremely wild. I would be so upset if my GM did that. But I do like how gutsy Jerry Jones operates over there in Dallas. And when it comes to draft picks, I mean, he's normally hitting on these draft picks, and maybe they looked at Trey Lance in the draft and was like, man, we would love to have that kid. And now you got an opportunity to get him for what'd they trade him for? A fifth?
Yeah, it was a fifth. Because literally 2 days before that, we were on Twitter talking. I was like, yeah, it'll probably be like a 4th or 6th round pick. And
maybe it was a fourth. Maybe it was a fourth.
Was it a fourth? And maybe I feel
like you might have been spot
sixth.
on.
Yeah. Fourth.
Yeah, but
it was
right
a fourth
about
round.
that. Ever since then, I've been telling people, when you ask me what's the compensation, I'm like, yo, I'd welcome Mike Evans here to New York. They're like, well, what's the compensation? Don't care. That ain't my job. Don't care. Bring in the good player.
Big shout out to Nick the Wick with the $2 super chat. Glad to be back. We are glad to be back, too. We are glad to have you. Appreciate you as always.
Yes, sir. My man, Nick the Wick, man. And best of luck on this football season with you, Nick the Wick. I see you out there getting them pancakes early, man. That's what's up.
I saw it. Saw the highlight on Twitter. So big shout out to Nick. And sort of to round this out for myself and my predictions, obviously. So where I have Washington losing outside of the 3 divisional games, I'm going to give them L's to. I'm going to give them 1 loss to Philly, the Giants, and the Cowboys. I got them losing to the Bills, the Seahawks, the Jets, and the 49ers. Okay, so those are the 4 losses outside the division that Washington's going to suffer. And then obviously Philadelphia made it to the Super Bowl, got better, added more players, drafted more crazy players. I don't know what's going on over there, how they seem to be doing all this stuff. Will Jalen Hurts?
That's how we.
Yeah. He's pulling some amazing strings over there. So shout out to that front office. They've been finding a way to do it. And obviously, I'm a big DeAndre Swift guy. They lose Miles Sanders. They bring in DeAndre Swift. They bring in my guy Rashad, 4 touchdowns, called it on the parlay penny. They're bringing in some guys, and obviously the defense just keeps adding Georgia Bulldogs, which is not a bad thing. So I think the Eagles are going to come out victorious here. I'm going to give them 3 losses within a division, and the 3 losses I see them having outside of division is going to be Kansas City, Buffalo, and the New York Jets. I think those are going to be the 3 losses for the Philadelphia Eagles outside of the division. I think the Eagles win the division at 11-6. I think both Washington and New York make the playoffs as a wild card, and I think the Dallas Cowboys are unfortunately going to be sitting at home on the couch watching the rest of the NFC East in the playoffs.
Okay. I got some beef with a few of these here. You know, the fact that you have similar schedules between all of these teams pretty much outside of about 2 matchups, but you guys as a one less win team than the Philadelphia Eagles. That's a drastic jump. And when we get to the stats, I hope the stats align. I kind of don't hope they align because it's going to make me even more mad about this prediction here. But I hope they align just a little bit. But mines are a little different. Let's get off into mine real quick, man. And like I told y'all, man, Giants fans, y'all don't be too upset. This is how we do over here at Awthentik and The Beard, man. We're not going to be pessimistic. We're not going to be optimistic, but we're going to be realistic. All right, man. Oh, man, shout out to the graphics department. Look at Baby Awthentik up there one time, man. All right, so this is how we going to do, and then we're going to break this down. I don't think the Eagles take really any kind of a step back this season. If anything, I think they're going to be a better team, but the matchups this year are a little bit more difficult. So I see the Eagles winning 12 games. I saw somebody in the chat said they're probably going to win at least 13. That would not surprise me one bit. I think the Dallas Cowboys, they drew 2 tough teams that all the other teams in the division didn't draw, which is the Chargers being one of them and the Detroit Lions being another. I think those 2 games are going to shape them out to be just a little bit behind the Philadelphia Eagles. But I do think if there is a team in the NFC, and I'm not saying NFC East, I'm saying the entire NFC that can compete with the Philadelphia Eagles, I really think right now it's the Dallas Cowboys. That's my thinking on it. I think they got the weapons on the outside to do so. They have a top 3 defense in the NFL right now, and that's what it's going to take to stop Jalen Hurts. And you're gonna have to be able to run the rock. I think Tony Pollard and Deuce Vaughn are definitely going to be able to handle that workload and be able to keep them in those games. Those should be some great matchups. And let's not forget that last year we did not get to see Jalen Hurts against Dak Prescott not once, because the first matchup had Cooper Rush and the second matchup Jalen Hurts was injured. So you had Gardner Minshew go out there, and he ended up losing a close game. So I do think that these 2 teams are going to be at the top of the division here, unless barring something interesting happening, maybe an injury or something like that, or maybe my New York Giants get to clicking on all cylinders, because the upgrades, when I look at the upgrades across the NFC East, I think the Giants have done probably the best job at upgrading their roster. I got the Giants falling in behind them at 8-9. You see that checkbox there still, though. I still think we're going to make the playoffs at 8-9. I think that the NFC as a total is going to be a much more difficult conference this year. Everyone from the NFC East last year benefited from a cupcake schedule. It's why I think the Philadelphia Eagles got out to the start that they did, why the New York Giants were able to get to 9 wins when they only won 3 out of their last 10. And why Washington was still in the mix towards the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season, even though they did botch the quarterback position. I got Washington falling in here at 7-10 at the bottom of the division, because I just think that if Washington is going to make the jump that the Beard thinks they're going to make, it's going to be a very big surprise. For me, I got to call this realistic as I possibly can. I went through every game for every one of these teams and just broke down, do I think this team is going to win or lose this game? Now, a lot of people like to, when they do schedule predictions, they like to have like a surprise win and a surprise loss. I'm not doing that. I'm looking at teams on the schedule like, hey, man, we should be in this game. We should win this game. And I'm looking at other ones like, man, I don't know about that one right there. That could be a very difficult matchup. So we'll start at the bottom. I'll start with the Commanders here. I do think that the Commanders they played a great game against the Philadelphia Eagles last year, and they ended up being the only team to beat Jalen Hurts last year. And I just think that I won't call it a fluke, right? But what they needed to go right or wrong for the Philadelphia Eagles, those things ended up happening. And offensively, I don't even think the Commanders played like a really outstanding game that really should warrant a W against a powerhouse team like the Philadelphia Eagles. But the turnovers from Philly is what really kept y'all in it. And also how you guys ground and pound and ran the ball that game. Time of possession was a drastic difference. Shout out to my homie, the Zilla, one time in the chat. We were talking about this on Xbox. I remember the plays was like 71-49 or something like that. And time of possession was like 80 to 20%. So that's not a formula that you can cook up every time you need that meal on the table. That's not a recipe that you go back to grandma's book to go to every time. And you saw the Giants in the playoffs. They tried to go to a pass attack against the Philadelphia Eagles, and that didn't work either. Most teams tried to pass the ball against the Philadelphia Eagles last season, and it didn't work out. So I think the Eagles are going to be a better team. But like I said, I'll start with the Commanders here. I think the losses for you guys are going to be Buffalo, Seattle, Miami, the Jets, San Francisco 49ers. And one that you're looking at as a W that I don't think is going to be a W is the Chicago Bears. You look at the Thursday night matchup from last year, you guys snuck out of that game. To me, that's a game that the Chicago Bears should have won. 3 red zone trips they had in the second half of that game. They came away with 0 points, not on one of the drives, not on 2 of the drives, but on all 3 of the drives. It still came down to a last possession on the 2-yard line for the Chicago Bears to put a touchdown in the end zone to win the game. And Justin Fields' wide receivers just decided to get the most drastic case of Butterfingers I've ever seen in my entire life. And it came down to Darnell Mooney, I believe it was, on the sideline where he juggled it. He caught it, but then his feet were out of bounds. Chicago is probably the most improved roster in the entire NFL, and I'm glad that my New York Giants don't got to play them this year. I'm rooting for Justin Fields heavy this year. I think he is going to be in that conversation of an MVP if he can keep his team around 500 or above, I think, because we know MVP is relying upon wins. You cannot be a bad team and win the MVP. So those are the losses right there. I got wins against the Cardinals, the Broncos, the Falcons. I think you guys match up really well against the Patriots, and I think that could be a W for you as well. And then the Los Angeles Rams. And I also got a split between you guys and the Cowboys, a split between us and y'all. A lot of people in New York are thinking that we're just going to sweep Washington. I don't think it's going to be like that. And then I got a Philly sweeping you guys as well. So to me, that leaves y'all at 7 wins. Could it be 8, possibly 9? You're going to have to win some surprise games. For my Giants, who I got finishing 3rd again in this division, I think the Eagles are going to get the better of us this year again. They'll probably sweep us. And I got a split between the Cowboys and the Commanders. I got losses to, and 3 of these games are back-to-back-to-back, which is going to be really tough for the Giants to dig themselves out of this hole if it goes down like this. I got losses to Seattle, Miami, Buffalo, the Jets, the Saints, and I think the Patriots are going to match up a little bit better against us than they do against y'all, and I think that'll yield a victory for Bill Belichick. You know, he went into the draft, got himself a lockdown corner over there. That defense was already good, and they know how to bait quarterbacks into making mistakes. I think that's going to be a game where Daniel Jones got to be on his A game if the Giants are going to want to win that game. I know a lot of people looking at the Patriots like that's a pushover team. For me, I'm not overlooking the Patriots. And like I said, I wanted to tamper my expectations for my Giants this year and pick a few games that I felt like, you know, were sort of evenly matched up, but one team's going to come out on top. And I think that the Saints game and the New England game are going to be those type of games. Saints made some major upgrades. They got Derek Carr quarterback. They brought in Williams at running back. Michael Thomas coming back. We already know what Chris Olave can do. That offense is high potent. And they got a good quarterback over there who can deliver the ball. Now, for the Cowboys, I think it'll be a split between all the teams in the division with them. That's the one spot where me and you agree on both these lists across the board, is that the Cowboys are going to split with everybody in the division. I got losses for the Cowboys to the 49ers because the 49ers are like the Cowboys' kryptonite. They beat them now 2 times to kick them out of the playoffs in the past 2 seasons. The Chargers, who I think are on the up and up, bringing in their former offensive coordinator, which we haven't talked about. You know, Kellen Moore being over there with the Chargers, I think that's going to match up extremely well for them when they go play Dallas. And then I got a loss to Buffalo and a loss to Miami. So could they beat Buffalo? Could they beat Miami? I think they could. Dallas could see themselves around 11 wins possibly, but I think they're going to be relatively the same team. And what's going to have to happen for Dallas, and fans across the country and the family who are in the chat, I think y'all are going to like this. Dallas needs to play good football during the year in November and December and ramp up their great football when they get into the playoffs. Too many times the Dallas Cowboys go into the playoffs and they're not as hot as they once were earlier in the year. Dak Prescott is coming into this year with no injuries, finally for the first time in a couple of seasons. People are overlooking Dak Prescott, and they think because he led the league in interceptions, they think that that's a part of his DNA now. And they think that Dak Prescott is a turnover-worthy, mistake-prone type of quarterback. And I just don't agree with that just yet. I don't take one season from a quarterback and use that one season to define that quarterback, whether it be a great season or a bad season. I think that's also something you can look into as far as Daniel Jones goes, and something you could look into as far as Jalen Hurts goes as well, because both those guys are coming off one great season when we're talking about Jalen Hurts. Can they duplicate that same type of success they had last year and string together another good season? With Dak Prescott, we know what he is. This guy just 2 seasons ago, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's MVP-like football right there, especially when you're looking at Jalen Hurts, who was in the MVP conversation with just 22 passing touchdowns last year, and he didn't even breach 4,000 yards. So for me, I think Dallas is going to be another front runner this year. As far as the Eagles go, I think that they're also another team that, addition by subtraction, you know, a lot of people are looking at losing their defensive coordinator to the head coaching job to the Arizona Cardinals as that's going to be bad for Philadelphia. But I think they're forgetting and not having enough recency bias. When you look at the Super Bowl matchup against the Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles really dominated most of that game. A lot of people are going to look to that fumble to Jalen Hurts, but offensively, Jalen Hurts was the best player on that field throughout that game. Defensively, they went in the locker room, and they could not make no adjustments. And Patrick Mahomes came out with Andy Reid in that second half, and they handled business. Gannon goes over there to the Cardinals. I think this is going to be addition by subtraction, bringing in a new defensive coordinator. I think that defense is going to be even better this year. And some of those games that appeared to be shootouts, when you look back at like the Detroit Lions game, a few other games, Washington being one of them, where teams are putting up big points on the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't think you're going to see a lot of games like that this year. And this is going to be my bold take. This is my hot take of this whole thing right here. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to start off 8-0. And if you look at the schedule, the only couple of teams I feel like that can really give them some trouble early on is the Miami Dolphins. And I think there was one other squad before the Week 9 mark. The first team that's going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be the Dallas Cowboys. So I got them starting 8-0. I got losses to Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo, the 49ers. I'm leaning a little bit towards that Seattle loss a little bit here. And I'm thinking Miami could possibly get them a run for their money, a split with Dallas. And I think that they're going to be able to sweep the Commanders, and I think they're going to be able to sweep the New York Giants, barring some change here. You know, I'm looking at every time the Giants have brought in weapons or a shiny new toy, whether it be from the draft in the past, it always falls a little bit flatter than I expected it to. So not with guys like Isaiah Hodgins, but for some other players.
What do you think that Jets-Eagles game is going to be like? Because that's in that stretch of the 8-0 possibility.
Here's the thing. The Jets have a really good roster, right? Defensively, one of the best, top 3 in the league. Sauce Gardner has not allowed a touchdown pass on him in his career yet in his first year, okay? Teams are not even targeting that guy. The problem with the Jets is offensive line.
Yeah, and the
Eagles I love what they've been doing with the Hard Knocks. Everything's looking great. Wide receiver core look good. They bring in Dalvin Cook. I think they're going to be able to beat a lot of good teams. Philadelphia is a great team. And when you look at what their defensive front did last year, 71 sacks last season, going up against this young Jets offensive line with an OG at quarterback who's probably not as mobile as he once was, I got to give the nod to the Philadelphia Eagles on that one.
Yeah, so that's definitely interesting. I can see when you said 8-0, I saw a couple of people on Twitter talk about 5-0 for the Eagles. So I wanted to go back and double check, and I mean I think you're right. Obviously, you know, that 3-game stretch after the first 5 is going to be the tough little stretch if they go 8-0. That's the Dolphins, the Jets, and then obviously the Commanders in Washington before they get to Dallas.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Jets could definitely give them a run. Shout out no Mets, no Nets, no Jets, pun intended here, since we're talking about the Jets. He said the only guy who hadn't worked out via grade, I'm not sure what he means by that, is Kenny Galladay. But Kenny Galladay wasn't a trade, so I don't think that's what he meant. He does say trade there, but that wasn't a trade. That was a free agent signing. Kadarius Toney in the draft, you know, like our draft picks we've had some guys who come in and we're like, yo, this guy, I'm telling y'all, Wan'Dale Robinson this year, man. And then it's like injury. So there's always been something for me every year. I remember the year bringing in guys like John Ross, Kyle Rudolph. People were like, oh, we got our burner and blah, blah. John Ross really didn't do nothing. He had a touchdown against the Saints, and that was about it. So a lot of these moves have definitely fell flat with the New York Giants in the past. So I'm just, you know, I'm keeping things very even keel going into the year. You know, I'm not as confident as I was last year because the schedule is a lot more difficult across the board. And before we move on from this, I did want to talk about a few things. The Eagles have their over-under for wins is 10.5, which is extremely high. The Cowboys is at 9.5. The Giants are at 7.5. The Commanders are at 6.5. Now, when we talked about strength of schedule, me and the Beard had like a pre-production meeting yesterday where we just kind of ironed out what we were going to do for today. We were talking about how the Cowboys had pretty much like a tough schedule, and I thought the same thing when I glanced at their schedule. But according to Warren Sharp, who is a must-follow on Twitter, a lot of Giants fans don't really like Warren Sharp because he's very honest. And I will tell you this, the truth gets you in trouble, especially on Twitter. People don't like those kind of people that just like spew truth and spew facts and give you data. They more want the homer takes on Twitter and stuff like that. I see the people who are overly positive, and it's always like all this engagement on those. But if somebody break down something pretty real, you know, people tend to either give them pushback. You'll see more comments on that thread than you will see likes, retweets, and quotes. And Warren Sharp is one of those guys who I think just, like I like to say on this show, he keeps it funky all the time. So he put together a strength of schedule, and the Eagles have the 10th easiest schedule in the entire NFL right now. And I went and fact-checked this across with PFF and a few other resources, and they're not far off from where Warren Sharp is. The Commanders have the 24th easiest schedule, which means that's the 8th most difficult schedule in the NFL. The Giants have the 12th easiest schedule, and the Cowboys have the 14th easiest schedule. And this is based off a projection of wins coming into this season. So he had, after he listed this on his website, and shout out to Warren Sharp, it's sharpfootball.com if y'all want to go check this out. He says, the question that was proposed was, are strength of schedule projections accurate? And his short answer was yes. Of the 7 teams that actually had the easiest schedules in 2022, of the 7, 6 of them went to the playoffs. The Eagles, 49ers, Jaguars, Cowboys, Chargers, and the Chiefs. Now, of the 7 that actually had the hardest schedules in 2022, only 2 of them went to the playoffs, and that was the Dolphins and the Bengals. The one thing I think that the Commanders have on their side, that can go against this 24th easiest, 8th most difficult schedule is the Commanders are one of 3 teams that have 12 more days of rest than every other team in the NFL. So in between games, the Commanders are going to have to be able to get their rest. And just to show y'all around the league, this is the chart that Warren Sharp put up. And this kind of shows you. So above the line is showing you the teams with the easier schedule. So according to him, the Atlanta Falcons and the Saints have the easiest schedule in the NFL. And then you got the Colts, the Niners, the Panthers, the Bears, the Steelers, Seahawks, Texans, and then the Eagles, and then the Packers, and then the Giants. You look down towards the bottom of that list, you got the Patriots, who have the most difficult schedule. Raiders are right there with them. So, you be the judge of this. This is all based off of projected wins from Warren Sharp. So, to me, this seems pretty accurate, and I think a lot of those teams in the middle, those are the teams that are going to succeed, I feel like, this year. The Beard, we were talking about some power rankings that we're going to get to at the end of this show, and he talked about the Bucs being somewhere around the Commanders on ESPN. But being that their schedule is a little bit lighter, a little bit easier, maybe they can go out there and win a couple of more games. But we'll see. That's how strength of schedule is going around the league right here. And PFF, their numbers aren't too far off. I'd say about 3 slots for each team, up or down, give or take. And there's a massive fucking spider right here in my studio right now. I'm definitely going to kill that mug during the commercial break. I'm going to try to set him free or something like that. But, I definitely think that, teams that have that easier schedule, the numbers show it there, that they're going to have a better chance at being one of these surprise teams that can make the playoffs, kind of like the Giants did last season.
Yeah. Listen, and look at that chart. It's interesting, the Saints and the Falcons. I guess, obviously, like you said, this is off of projected wins. So, that division, people are looking at, Tampa Bay and Carolina probably as being a little bit down, but it's interesting because you see like the Rams are like kind of in the middle. And I think I don't necessarily think this, but I think a lot of people think that the Rams and the Cardinals are going to be 2 of the worst teams in NFL, but
and the Cardinals rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
I think the Rams, there's a little bit more question marks there,
Exactly.
but then when you come into the season and you hear Cooper Kupp had a setback with that hamstring.
Yeah. It's tough.
Starting to feel like those might be the 2 worst teams. But you got the Colts, you got the Texans out there who are dealing with young quarterbacks. Those teams might struggle as well.
But I look at the tougher side of that, and you see a lot of the AFC East. So, are they talking about that's going to be a combination of the inner, division games, because that division appears to be one of the better divisions, I think, in football. I mean, I'm not as high on the Patriots as some people are, but I am extremely high on the Jets, the Dolphins, and obviously the Bills. But then also that division has to play the NFC East. And I think that it's fair to say that I think with the NFC East, I think it's fair to say that a lot of people are looking at Philadelphia, Dallas, and the Giants as potential playoff teams. There are a few people with Washington. You either think that they're going to be a 6-win team or you think they're going to be a playoff team. There's not a lot of people so far that I've seen that has Washington in that sort of 500 range. It's either
right.
It's either going to be the bottom or this team's going to make the playoffs. I did see on Good Morning Football that the young lady had the Commanders.
I saw you retweet that today.
Yeah,
I hate that show. I hate that show. I'm going to do my best Green Goblin impersonation here and get this spider real quick. Just hold it down for 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
First swing, I'm going to get him.
I wish we had an in-studio camera right now as we watch. I'll do like a play-by-play. Awthentik he is standing up now. He is off the screen. Here he comes. He does appear to have a slipper in his hand. Old school mom style. He is going at the spider on the wall with the slipper. It appears he has got him.
Yeah, I got him. I normally will free the spiders too. We ain't no animal cruelty over here, no insect cruelty over here. I normally will free him, but right now I don't know. He's messing with my livelihood right now. It's either me or him.
And just a quick little question from the chat. They want to know what I think Washington's weakest link is. Head coaching. I don't think it's head coaching. Now, listen, I don't think Ron Rivera is Bill Belichick, but I also don't think that, Ron Rivera is Nathaniel Hackett, okay? So I think our weakest link right now, and I think the addition of Eric Bieniemy, making him an assistant, head coach, I think that's going to help him. I think Ron's got a lot less on his plate this year. I think that's going to help him as a head coach as a whole.
Now, was that question with players as well, too, or just on the coaching staff?
He just says weakest link, and he's asking me if I think the head coaching is the weakest link, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think the weakest link,
though, is going to
it's going to be the offensive line and our linebackers. I think that's going to be our
same thing as last year, right?
Yep. Except this year we got a quarterback, man.
Allegedly.
We're a quarterback away, right? Isn't that the saying here in Washington for like the last 5 years?
That's what everybody says, right? We're quarterback away, man. But the weakest link is going to be the offensive line and the linebacker core, right? Yeah. But like I said earlier, you can't check every box, man. It's the NFL. Somebody's going to have to do a little bit more to make up for some of the other positions and how those aren't panning out as well.
No. Big shout out to Lax with a $4.99 super chat. Says, got picked 10 out of 10. Should I go Saquon, Pollard, Lamb, Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry? Which combination of the two do you think is best? Personally, since it's a 10 round sort of situation, you probably can have your pick of, 10 team as opposed to 12. I think you double down on the running back here. I would go Saquon and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Saquon and Henry. I'd go Tony Pollard as maybe a unsung little backup possibly, but Pollard coming into the year off the injury, granted it's not an ACL, but running backs coming off of injuries like that, I would expect the productivity to be a little bit less. So I think the safe bet here, Derrick Henry, look at what Tennessee's dealing with over there, man. They don't got too much going on. They did bring in DeAndre Hopkins, but Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. I want to say he had 7 touchdowns in like 8 games that year. He got hurt. He's always in the end zone, so I'd go Derrick Henry, Saquon as well.
Yeah, big shout out to Skywalker Steele, too. I see you in the building.
Hey, what's poppin', man? I've been tuning into their morning show a lot, man. His morning show's super dope, man. Big shout out to the homie one time in the building.
It's a good thing you didn't see my prediction for your Dallas Cowboys.
We can always flash it one more time. Let's just flash it one more time. This is where he got y'all, dog. Got y'all at 8 and 9, man. Kind of crazy. I think it's just his love for his Washington Commanders that allowed him to do this, because he was like, I can't put Awthentic's Giants in the basement. I got to put them Cowboys, man. Screw them Cowboys, man. Easy decision for him, I'd imagine. All right, so that does it for the record predictions here. We're going to go off and do some of the stat predictions here. We're going to do stat leaders as far as passing leaders, rushing leaders, and receiving leaders for each team. I think we're going to we'll start with the Beard. We'll start with the Beard here one time. So Beard's going to give you his passing leader. We already know who it's going to be the way he's been talking about him all year. And shout out to the graphics department because they cooked this up on the fly as well.
Howell steps up, takes off, inside the 10, the 5, touchdown.
All right, let's get to it. So the Beard has Sam Howell throwing for 3,964 yards, 29 touchdowns, 29 whole damn touchdowns. This is not including rushing. We talked about this off air. And just 10 interceptions. Explain yourself.
Yeah, so for me, I am looking at Sam Howell in this season in comparison, in a sort, to Jalen Hurts' season last year, okay? And then obviously bringing in Eric Bieniemy, I think the tools are here for Sam Howell. Seeing him in person, at training camp and watching the preseason games, seeing him in person against the Ravens too, watching the Ravens joint practices as well. And the weapons that are around him, Obviously, you're going to see what I think of those weapons following, some other stat predictions from myself and Awthentik here in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I think Sam Howell's going to have a fantastic year. So the 3,964 yards, I don't think is that insane. That's only 233 yards per game, which I think is something that is definitely
only 233 yards per game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're not talking about Daniel Jones last year. We're talking about,
I'd be curious to see how many quarterbacks threw for over 233 yards a game last year.
I would say probably 15 or so. I think almost half the league.
There were only 9 quarterbacks who passed for over 4,000 yards last year. So there you go.
Yeah. But he's not over 4,000.
So passing yards, this should put him in the top 10, right?
It would probably be in like around 13-ish, I'd say, in passing yards.
So you're expecting a bump across the league for passing yards then. Okay.
No, listen, Eric Bieniemy. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say it this year, but hopefully, it's a lot of times in a positive manner. And I think the weapons are there.
I think you're confused. Eric Bieniemy didn't wear number 15 when he was in Kansas City.
No, he didn't. But I'm not predicting Sam Howell to be Patrick Mahomes. I think these are pretty reasonable expectations for Sam Howell. If it's 3,500 yards, that's not that big of a difference to me. I think that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is. Oh yeah, 500 more is a pretty big difference. Like I told you, only 9 quarterbacks over 4,000. You're looking at a top 10 quarterback right here. You look at the touchdowns you got here. 29 touchdowns. How many quarterbacks you think threw for 29 or more touchdowns last year?
11 or 12.
6.
Yeah. So I was originally at 25, but I bumped it up a little bit. I thought, I think he's just gonna have a season. I got a feeling. This is a little bit more of a gut feeling. Last year I was a little bit more harsher on Carson Wentz, obviously.
No, you had 29 for Wentz. I think you had 31 for Wentz last year on the prediction show.
So, it's kind of a little bit more realistic, but yeah, I think 29 touchdowns is under 2 touchdowns a game. I will say Sam Howell throws for at least 1 touchdown every single game this year.
You say, right, let me tell you how you say these stats, right? You be like 233 yards a game, that ain't nothing, right? You say it like we're just talking about getting that for 1 game. Like I could see him throwing for 233 yards in a game. Yeah. That's how I would act, just like you're acting right now. And same thing for touchdowns. You're like, that's 2 a game. You know how difficult it is to throw for 2? There's only 1 quarterback who threw for 2 touchdowns a game last year. Was Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, so I'm not expecting him to throw for 2 a game, but I do expect him to have at least 1 passing touchdown every game this year. Sprinkle in a couple of 2.
Why you would expect that?
Why would I not expect that?
It's his first year as a quarterback. You said you're comparing it to the Jalen Hurts model. When Jalen Hurts came in as a starter after only playing 3 games the previous year, he put up 16 passing touchdowns, bro.
Yeah, Sam Howell.
But you're skipping that year. You're doing the Jalen Hurts model, but you skipping
a year.
His first year as a starter, going right to the MVP season.
Right to the MVP season.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, man. I might put a poll up in the chat here and ask them if they think the Beard is a homer. Because, man, dog, these takes here, bro, these takes.
Big shout out to Zach G for the $1.99 super chat. Says Giants and commies are mirror images of each other, which is interesting that you say that because I saw some people talking. There's a bet going around on Giants Twitter. A couple of people from Giants Twitter have made a bet on who's going to have a better statistical season, Daniel Jones or Sam Howell.
That's BT who picked Sam Howell, actually.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be monitoring that situation closely throughout the year. But I do think that there is some stunning similarities between these 2 teams. Obviously, I still do think you guys have the better coaching staff. I think you guys have way better tight end. I think we probably have a little bit better, defensive line. On paper, we still have to see that combination produce. Chase Young healthy. And then I think that you guys obviously have the better running back. So I think there's a lot of outweighing each other to make it very similar. I do think that that's a reasonable comment.
I like Zach, but I don't agree with this take at all. For one, we have a quarterback who's entering veteran status, kind of, right? So there's no mirror there for sure. You guys got a guy who only played 1 game. Quarterback, out of here. Tight end, we got a guy who was at the top 3 in the league at one point. Y'all don't have that either. Logan Thomas and whoever else the other scraps are out there. What's my man, Cole Turner? Is that his name? Cole Turner?
Cole Turner.
I saw him live. He was all right. running back wise, we have a stud at running back. Y'all have a bruiser running back. Two kind of running back system, very different there as well. Wide receiver core goes to the Washington Commanders. You guys, you could take Curtis Samuel, who's the third wide receiver on Washington, put him on New York. He'd instantly be a wide receiver 1 in New York right now. So I think the wide receiver core is very different. Defensively, I think the safeties are kind of similar. Corner, the secondary as a unit is fairly similar. I think we have the edge at linebacker now that we brought in Bobby O, and then now you got Isaiah Simmons. Coaching-wise, definitely goes to the New York Giants until further notice. We don't know what Eric Bieniemy can do for real. And when you looked at the quarterback documentary that was on Netflix, you really didn't see, and granted it's camera work and editing and all this stuff, but you didn't see a major relationship between Patrick Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy on that sideline. It really didn't seem like Eric Bieniemy, and I'm not doubting him, don't get me wrong, but it just you didn't get that evidence of like, oh, this guy led, he's lending a lot towards what's happening offensively over there. So I can't agree there. And defensive fronts are similar. Defensively, these teams are more similar than they are offensively. We got the interior guys. You guys got some good interior guys too with Payne and Allen as well. But I think we have with Kayvon Thibodeau, we have an up-and-comer rusher who I think is what you guys are hoping to have out of Chase Young. Montez Sweat solidified over there for sure.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Interesting.
Shout out Tuto in the building, my guy.
Big shout out to Tudo with a $4.99 super chat says, massive salutes and respect to Big Dog, Awthentik, Beards, and all diehard Giants fans in America. Greetings from our entire rugby team in Italy. Pound Italy.
Hope all is well, man. Hope the offseason treating you well, Tudo. Good to see you back in the building. I've been seeing you on other podcasts, man, supporting like nobody can support, bro. So big shout out to Tudo one time, man. One of the, I'd say the backbone of support for the New York Giants community, man. He's in everybody's stream, man. And nowadays there's so many New York Giants channels and streams and so many different people doing podcasts and stuff on Apple Music, man. So it's great to have people like you around the community that support us, man. Big shout out to Tudo one time.
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with Sam Howell. I think, I'm probably a little higher than most, but
it's going to be the theme of today. It's going to be the theme of today.
We gonna see.
We gonna see, man. So let's so this is what I want to do. We got 23 minutes until we hit 8:30. I want to get everybody out of here by 8:30, and I want all of y'all to go over there and raid the New York Revival stream that they're going to be doing at 8:30. They're going to have 4 special guests on there today. They got rapper Ransom. They got Kay Adams, formerly from the what was that joint called? The Good Morning
Football.
Good Morning Football show.
She got her own show.
And now she got her own
network.
thing going on. And they got Tiki Barber over there. And I forget who the other guest is, but they got 4 big guests. I'm going to be over there in the chat, chopping it up, chilling, man. So when we leave here, make sure y'all go over there to New York Revival. We'll try to get the stream in the chat here so you can just click that and meet us over there. And when you pull up, throw in a bicep with a hashtag AATB to let them know that we sent you over there. And we definitely going to enjoy that one as well. So we're going to try to fly through these a little bit. Let's go ahead and move it on to our quarterback here. No disputing, no debating who's going to be getting the first team snaps this year. We're going to be talking about this man one time, Daniel Jones. All right, man. So Daniel Jones last year is coming off a really good year. And I will say this. I was chopping it up with a homie on Apex Legends earlier. We were playing. I just met this dude, and he was just in our party running with us. He told me he was a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And he said Daniel Jones is one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL. And my first knee-jerk kind of response was like, wait a minute, right? Like, nah, this dude working with scraps. But I do feel like there is a bit of a narrative in this offseason that, like, Daniel Jones' season from 2022 was, like, completely amazing. Now, when you go over the numbers, you got, 22 total touchdowns. I'm not going to mess that up because I know how Giants fans react when I say 15 passing touchdowns. They're not going to like that. Just 5 interceptions. He had the best touchdown to interception ratio across the entire league. 3,205 yards, right? So I think that with these weapons here, those numbers should increase, but I'm expecting to see the exact same kind of a Daniel Jones, a guy who's not going to take the risk that's going to end in a bad situation and turn the ball over. He's going to take care of the football because early on in his career, he figured that out. You cannot be out here bumbling the football like he was doing as a rookie. And ever since then, he's cleaned that up to the point where when I hear these analysts on national media outlets talking about he's fixed the turnover problem, still it's like, yo, you're living 3 years
It's
in the
lazy.
past, okay?
It's
You're
lazy.
late. Like, that was a long time ago, and something happening for just 1 year, we can't call it a problem. It's the same kind of thing that I do with people with a good season or a bad season. I'm not going to look at them and define them by that 1 year. So I think for Daniel Jones, this is relatively a good expectation for him. 24 touchdowns. Things should open up for all these other wide receivers on the roster with Darren Waller out there drawing double teams, especially when we get down to the red zone. And I expect Daniel Jones to be the same efficient quarterback he was within the red zone. Now, those boots and those runs, I don't think they're going to be there as much as they were last year. This year, I think teams are going to be studying this tape, and they know Daniel Jones on the boot, he's a problem. You saw it in the Chicago game in a major way where he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. You saw it in a major way against the Indianapolis Colts where he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. So he got half his rushing touchdowns in 2 games. I think we can kind of just tamper the expectation just a little bit here. I think Jones is probably going to have around 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns on the year, 24 through the air, 8 interceptions, 3,777 yards. So we've done this before. Last year, man, my numbers was the only one that I hit last year was Saquon Barkley. And he breached those numbers for me. I think I had Saquon at like just under 1,000 yards. It was like 980 or something like that. He ended up putting up to 1,300. So this year I've learned my lesson with Daniel Jones. I expect the bar to be raised, obviously, but just not that much. I think that with what we have here at the wide receiver core, it's not that drastically different than what we had last year. Like I said, guys like Paris Campbell, they're going to have to come in and fill the shoes of guys like Richie James. These guys who were depth pieces who came out here and they produced for the New York Giants. So this kind of where I stand as far as Daniel Jones. And honestly, I think he's going to breach these numbers. I really do. But I wanted to set the floor right. I think 24 touchdowns is it. If he throws for like 28, it's not going to surprise me. But if Daniel Jones goes out there and he throws for over 30 touchdowns, it's going to be a big surprise for me. And I'm going to be an extremely happy New York Giants fan.
One quick question on Daniel Jones, though. How do you think, say this is pretty much spot on, right? How do you think this sort of stat line at the end of the season, not taking into consideration playoffs or not playoffs, but just the stat line right here, how do you think the fan base reacts to a season like this from Daniel Jones?
I think they'll like it. I think we're just looking for progression here, you know? Like bringing in Brian Dable after we had the whole Joe Judge regime with Jason Garrett and whatnot, we wanted a little bit more progression, right? We wanted the 15 passing touchdowns. It bothers me a certain way, right? Because my starting quarterback needs to throw more touchdowns than that. And I know some people are going to say, hey, stats don't matter, that don't matter, whatever. But for me, the one stat that does matter is wins, and the second stat that matters is touchdowns. You need to score touchdowns. Unless you got the Ravens 2000 defense out there, you better be going out there trying to score touchdowns. And we know last year, the Giants were, I believe they were ranked 9th in red zone efficiency, but we were not getting down there in the red zone a lot. As far as fans go, I think these numbers are going to be they'll be just fine for the fans. They want to see the progression in year 2. Honestly, I think the interception number I put here is just a little bit safe. I think he could go out there and put up similar interception numbers as he did in 2022 and be around 5 or 6. But I'm just giving, a little bit of leadway for a tip pass, maybe some lack of chemistry from some of the new targets, new wide receivers that are going to be out there. But this is going to be a Darren Waller show, and he's going to be Daniel Jones' new security blanket this year. You're not going to see a guy in the slot being the security blanket like it was last year, with Richie James being the guy who I felt like was getting a ton of the targets, early on in the year. But I do think that with Darren Waller out there, he's going to be the guy we're going to be targeting the most. And then guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell, they all should be able to eat. Wan'Dale Robinson, they should be able to eat off the double teams that Darren Waller is going to eventually see. We saw a good taste of this in the preseason game where on the first drive, Darren Waller had 3 receptions. They targeted him like 4 or 5 times. We've seen it in camp. The first day that we got to camp in pads, Daniel Jones, it seemed like every play he was throwing the ball to Darren Waller, and that's exactly what I would do if I'm Daniel Jones as well. I think we're going to see a more mature quarterback this year, a little bit more risky, not a complete risky quarterback, but he will be willing to take a little bit more risk, especially with guys like Jalen Hyatt, to be able to stretch the field, take the top off of these defenses, be able to split these safeties and be able to draw some attention down there. You're going to have to throw that pass to be able to make people respect it. And I think in return, that's going to open up some stuff over the middle for Daniel Jones. So for me, it's not going to surprise me if these numbers bump up about 300 yards. You see Daniel around that 4,000 mark and possibly around the 28 touchdown mark.
Well, I think it's going to be it's hard to argue against this sort of, stat line that you've put together. Obviously It's not going to be anything dramatically different than this. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less as far as interceptions and touchdowns go. But I think that offense is going to be a little bit more intricate than last year. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of Darren Waller. I think that like I said, that's a top 5 move in the NFL offseason
Most definitely
this year to me. So.
Now, let me ask you this real quick, and then we'll move on to the next one. If Daniel Jones' numbers look like last year, do you think that should be a problem for the Giants fans?
Am I allowed to take into consideration playoffs or not?
Sure. Say it's the exact same thing. Say they get to the playoffs, wild card, 1 win, lose in the divisional, and Daniel puts up the same kind of numbers.
I wouldn't look at it as a problem. No. A concern? Yes. Problem? No.
That's probably the way I should have worded that. Shout out to Sergeant Mayhem in the building, too. He said, take chances, not risks. And that's probably how I should have worded that as well.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to put that. All right, let's go ahead and get off into the next position here, man. We're going to talk about your boy. All right, Beard, break it down. You got 939 rushing yards. I like that number for Brian Robinson. 4.1 yards per carry. That's just a tick up from last year. I believe he was at 3.9 last year. And 9 rushing touchdowns. How you feeling about all this?
This one was difficult for me because for those of you that don't know or maybe watching us for the first time, I'm a huge Antonio Gibson guy. And I believe that this offense with Eric Bieniemy is built for a running back like Antonio Gibson more so than it is Brian Robinson. And then in the preseason, Antonio Gibson ran more routes and more rushing attempts than Brian Robinson had when Sam Howell was on the field during preseason. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see how they operate this backfield, what that pass to run ratio is going to be like. I did like seeing Brian Robinson catching the ball a lot more this preseason than I think a lot of people really think of him as this go. You know what I'm saying? Mike Allstott style of a runner, but he can catch the ball in the backfield too. I think it's going to be very even. I think Antonio Gibson maybe has more all-purpose yards than Brian Robinson. But, I mean, this is basically like I think a split backfield is going to look as far as rushing yards go. It comes down to 55 yards per game here. And I think that if you're getting, 120 from 2 backs, I think that's a good run game. You guys know we're a run-the-damn-ball sort of, situation over here at Awthentik and The Beard. We like to run the damn ball. And the 9 touchdowns, I think, is going to be more of a goal line vibe there. It could seem a little bit high there, and I can understand that. But I think I'm looking at that as more of a goal line vibe with Brian Robinson. I think he's going to be a guy that not necessarily just a goal line, but a guy that breaks one from like the 15-yard line. A red zone sort of situation.
How many of them would you take from the 9 to be like he's punching it in from the 1 or 2 yard line?
4 of the 9, I think. 4 of the 9, I think, are going to be
so Ezekiel Elliott type of vibe there for that one.
And funny you say that because I kind of basing my Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson outlook a little bit like Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott combination from last year.
So let me get this right. So your quarterback's going to be Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Your running back's going to be Ezekiel Elliott.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to wide receivers, is it going to be Des Bryant?
No.
It's going to be Odell Beckham. That's who it's going to be.
You think it. You reminded of Odell Beckham. But, yeah, I'm expecting I think this is a solid season right now. Could he get over 1,000 yards? It's very difficult for me to say whether him or Antonio Gibson. I think it's just going to be a hot hand sort of situation. And I think this is what we've been waiting for. And I feel like we have an offensive coordinator that's going to use Antonio Gibson way better than Scott Turner was able to do. And I think that in turn just opens up the door for a guy like Brian Robinson to do what he does best also. So I'm excited for the possibilities, obviously. But we'll see. It's all of this is going to be brand new. Like my whole idea of this offense and this team could drastically change a few weeks into the season, so.
I bet it will. It seems like you feel like with the new coaching staff that the running back kind of like hierarchy has been reset because we know going into last season, Ron Rivera was extremely high on Brian Robinson. And even though he got shot Thursday night, they made it a point to get him in the end zone. He was the guy at the podium talking to media after the game. It seemed like they wanted him to be the star in Washington. And it kind of seems like from what you're saying here that maybe with the RPO-based kind of system that Bieniemy's going to bring in there, maybe Antonio Gibson could be the better back to be able to pass catch out of the backfield and be able to get some of the chunk yards on the ground as well.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a possibility. And I think you have to remember, I think a lot of the Brian Robinson sort of, we drafted him. Yeah, so obviously there's something there. We believed in him. And I'm a huge fan of Brian Robinson. I don't want that to be lost in this shuffle. But I think that a lot of people forget that what catapulted Brian Robinson last season was the Antonio Gibson fumble. And he did a fantastic job of holding on to the rock last season. And I think that put him back into good graces with that original coaching staff. But then when you bring in Bieniemy into this sort of, his game plan, his philosophy, the way that he uses the creativity with the running backs and the motions and the versatility of Antonio Gibson, I feel like we're finally going to be able to see what Antonio Gibson is truly capable of. And in turn, I think that helps Brian Robinson as a running back.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. And we saw Antonio Gibson, just 2 years ago. He was third in the league in rushing, so he's capable for sure.
Yep.
All right, let's fly through these, man. Let's go ahead and talk about my running back one time. All right, my man Saquon Barkley. Now, these numbers are a little bit less than last year when we talk about the rushing yards and the touchdowns. Last year, Saquon Barkley had 1,312 yards and 10 touchdowns on 295 carries. And I think the carries is the most important thing to look at here because I feel like with all the new weapons, this offense is going to open up a little bit more. You're not going to see Saquon Barkley get 30 carries like he did against the Texans that one game. You're not going to see the workload in the first 9 games be all Saquon Barkley and a little bit of RPO and boot from Daniel Jones. I think we're going to see a more balanced offense. Last year, the New York Giants were 50% pass, 50% rush, dead even, exactly number of plays. So I think this year we're going to get closer to about 60-40 with the pass. But Saquon Barkley's yards per carry is going to go up this year. I think he was at 4.1 last year. I'm going 4.5 this year. All ones, man. 1,111 rushing yards, I think, for Saquon Barkley this year. And listen, man, I don't know what the future holds for Saquon Barkley. They did get a 1-year deal done. I thought they were going to get at least a 2-year deal done. A lot of people are looking at it like he was greedy. He should have signed the contract last year at the bye. But a lot of people overlooked the fact that Saquon Barkley was the best running back in football at the bye last year. So if I'm him, I'm probably looking at it like, nah, y'all got to bring a bigger bag to the table here because I am the offense right now, and I know what I'm capable of, and I know also what I'm producing and putting on the field for the New York Giants. This year, I do think that the reception numbers are going to jump up a little bit. He was tied for our leading receptions last year on the team, but I think his yards are going to bump up. We really haven't seen Saquon be a part of this passing attack since Eli Manning was here in 2018 when he had 91 receptions. I don't think he'll quite get the 91 receptions, but I think he's going to get somewhere in that 60 range. You'll see a lot of some screens coming out of this offense. You'll see a little bit of Texas routes coming out of this offense a little bit as well. I really want to see them use that more. Get Saquon Barkley going up against some of these linebackers and exploiting that matchup. But this is where I see the numbers. And like I said, man, I'm trying to keep things a little bit modest. I want to see him breach the numbers so that I can feel good about it at the end of the year. But I think that this is a fair assessment of what Saquon Barkley is capable of putting on the field this year.
I absolutely 1,000% love and agree with everything you just said about this. And I think it goes back to what I was talking about with Daniel Jones. I think that we're going to see the evolution, not necessarily on just the players, but the offensive system as a whole, in the second year of having this offense. I think you're going to see a little bit more intricacies with the offense, which is going to open up to more passing, because we have to remember the like you said about the carries, the amount of carries versus the amount of pass attempts was just so lopsided last year that I think you're going to see a little bit more of a balance coming in between those two statistical
Yeah, and Daniel should
categories.
be able to stretch the field more. That was one of the biggest knocks on the Giants was we weren't throwing the ball down the field, not taking chances like my man Sergeant Mayhem said, and playing very conservative. And I think this year you're going to have to open that up a little bit, but it's going to be schemed open as well. Mm-hmm. We saw in the preseason on that first drive, Daniel Jones, 8 of 9, hitting these crossing routes. A lot of these concepts are going to make things very easy on Daniel Jones. Shout out to JT O'Sullivan, who I always check out his quarterback breakdowns. He did one for Daniel Jones on the preseason, and he talked about some of the philosophy and some of the schemes that Brian Dable and Mike Kafka are putting together over there, making it very easy for the quarterback. Everyone wants to call Daniel Jones a one-read quarterback, right? And they say that as a stain on his game. at the end of the day, if your coach can put you in the position to only have to read one side of the field or read one player on the defense, and then you can make your move, that's just making things easier for the quarterback to process and be able to excel in that offense. So I think Daniel Jones is going to be more efficient this year. I do think that he's going to be able to get more shots down the field, and not necessarily like the deep shots. I'm talking like the intermediate shots. Like when you look at the interception against the Detroit Lions, when we had, I believe that was Hodgins coming across on a crosser route and ended up getting picked off. You look at the crosser route with Lawrence Cager against the Detroit Lions. Same thing. We struggled at stretching the field as far as the intermediate game. You look at the Minnesota Vikings game, the crosser route to Isaiah Hodgins in that game. It was an interception as well. So I just think that those kind of plays are going to be easier for Daniel, more open, especially with Saquon Barkley in the backfield. Darren Waller out there playing some wide receiver and some tight end. I think the whole field is just going to open up a little bit more for this offense, and especially for Saquon here, man. Like, let's stack boxes. I dare you stack the box. There's not a cornerback in the entire league that's going to be able to stay step for step with Jalen Hyatt out here. There isn't one. You're going to need safety help over the top, which in return is going to open up some things in the box for Saquon. I think we're going to get more explosive plays. He led our team in explosive plays last year. I think we're going to get more explosive plays from Saquon Barkley, and like I listed here, the yards per carry is going to go up.
And one more thing I'll throw in there to tack on to that. What I agree about that yards per carry too is because think about what Darren Waller is going to do to the linebackers. Taking out those linebackers is just going to open up that space. And it gives that extra a couple of yards that the running back is going to be able to attack. So I'm so
RPO, all that stuff should look much better this year.
Absolutely.
Definitely. All right, well, let's see. So we just got wide receivers left. Let's go my wide receiver first. Now, notice I said my wide receiver. I know y'all gonna like that because this is gonna be our wide receiver one right here until further notice. It's gonna be Darren Waller. Now, Darren Waller, we know the biggest knock on Darren Waller is straight up injuries, okay? This dude has missed 14 games over the last 2 seasons. 2020 was his last solid year, and it was a solid year for sure. He had 107 receptions on 145 damn targets. They were throwing this man the ball. And he had 1,196 yards and 9 touchdowns. Now, my expectations for Darren Waller, like I said, we've brought weapons in here in the past, and I feel like all these weapons kind of not let me down, but they just don't give me exactly what I expect, and they don't live up all the way to the hype. And yes, Kenny Galladay is at the top of that list, but also guys like Kadarius Toney are there, and John Ross and Kyle Rudolph. And, I mean, the list goes on and on. You could go back to Golden Tate. You could on and on, okay? I think Darren Waller this year, 70 receptions. A lot of his receptions are going to be 10 yards and under. You know, I think Daniel Jones, his bread and butter last year was the short game. He was dead last in the NFL as far as yards per attempt go. And I think that's going to bump up a little bit. I think he'll probably still be in the bottom third this year, but it's going to bump up about a yard, I would say, at least. And Darren Waller is going to be that main target. I see 4 touchdowns. Now, that number might be kind of low to a lot of Giants fans out there who are hoping Darren Waller could come out here and really, really exploit these defenses. But I think when we get down to the red zone, that's when teams are going to start to bracket him. They're going to start to double cover him. That's where my man Daniel Bellinger is going to show up. Take this to the bank. Daniel Bellinger will have more receiving touchdowns this year than Darren Waller will. I think it'll just be over. He's going to have 5 or 6 this year because when we run that 12 personnel, you're going to see Daniel Bellinger get the one-on-one matchups like we saw in the preseason game, and then he's going to roll his ass in the end zone like he did in that preseason game. So I'm looking for a good 2 tight end type of set here, but Darren Waller, who can also play the outside. We've seen him do that in Las Vegas or Oakland, whatever it was when he was there. Darren Waller is going to be a matchup nightmare for defenses across the league, I see. And I think 875 yards is pretty modest. Could he get to 1,000, maybe 900? Possibly. And I think all the wide receivers in our core are going to be pretty similar. They're all going to contribute to this offense. I think Darius Slayton is going to be right around this yardage mark. I also think that Isaiah Hodgins is going to be right around this yardage mark as well. And it'll be a very nice, even distribution of throwing the ball. And Daniel will get that nickname solidified back in the building. Danny Dimes one time. Y'all know what it is.
Listen, I think, unfortunately, you are absolutely wrong across the board with all these numbers with Darren Waller.
Okay.
I think you did it on purpose because I think these are absolutely criminally low for Darren Waller. I am so high on Darren Waller as a player, and not even just as a player, but I felt like this was significant for Daniel Jones, significant for Darren Waller. I think he cracks 1,000 yards. I think he gets 7 touchdowns, and I think he gets closer to 80 to 85 receptions.
I think you're thinking like that because you're thinking ceiling with a guy who's going to be out there for 17 games. I don't think Darren Waller is going to be out there for 17 games. He has 2 healthy seasons in his entire career.
Very, very valid point, and I will give you that. But I just want to make sure that it's said out here. If we have to go back to receipts, that the Beard was here saying Darren Waller. It
won't bother me either way. If he gets to 1,000, because I think he can get to 1,000, even if he doesn't play every game. I think he could get to 1,000. But criminally low would be.
I had to hype it. I had to hype it up a little bit. I had
90 something catches or something like that. 7.
It could be possible. Could he be Travis Kelce in this offense?
Oh, I think he's going to be Travis Kelce in this offense. But you got to look at it, too, at the quarterback position. Daniel Jones is a really good quarterback, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. That's one thing I think most people can agree on, except this one dude on Twitter. I swear, he's like, I study ball, man. Patrick Mahomes, Daniel Jones, they're the same. I'm just like, all right, I that mute button is right here. That's that. But I feel you. I mean, I think those numbers could be higher. You never know. They could be higher. But like I told you, man, I'm looking at this not too optimistic, not too pessimistic.
No, yeah, I know. It's a realistic, very realistic. And I think it gives the opportunity. It's a layup for a slam dunk season for Darren Waller.
Now speaking of unrealistic and very optimistic, this to me is the craziest take you have of all takes today. Let's go to your wide receiver one time. Talk to him, man. You got your man Jahan Dotson at 1,196 receiving yards. 99. You love that 99, boy. 99 receptions. 6 touchdowns. I like the 6 touchdowns. I think he could actually get more than 6 touchdowns. But, yeah, let me know what you're thinking about this, man. How did you come to this determination of 1,196 yards for Jahan Dotson? And you think he's going to get more yards than Scary Terry McLaurin. That's not too scary.
Yeah, listen, I think Terry McLaurin is going to go over 1,000 yards also. But, yes, I think Jahan Dotson is going to be the breakout player of the NFL this year.
Damn.
I think he is going to come out here and he is going to shock a lot of people. A lot of people, they won't shock because a lot of people are high on Jahan Dotson. But, yes, I think Jahan Dotson has an absolutely fantastic year. And we're talking about the players I was using to kind of get these numbers for Sam Howell and for Brian Robinson. I'm looking at Jahan Dotson to have a hybrid season of what Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown had last year. So at 1,196, that's going to basically put him at about 70 yards per game. 99 receptions are going to put him basically at about 5.5 to 6 receptions a game. So it's a little high. I think me and you are on opposites.
Maybe you were a little high when you came into this show because it's a little high. You know how many yards Devonta Smith had last year?
He had 9. He had over 1,000. Didn't both of them have over 1,000?
Yes, they did.
It was 1,100 and no, he had like 1,184 yards or something like that.
1,196.
Oh yeah, okay, makes sense.
You know where that ranked him in yardage across the league?
13th.
9th. So you guys are gonna have top 10 wide receiver. Terry McLaurin probably another top 10 wide receiver. A top 10 running back as far as touchdowns go. A top 10 quarterback. Anything else I need to know?
I mean, we were going to be 10-7.
Super Bowl? Oh, I thought you were going to say Super Bowl.
No, we're going to be 10-7. We're going to make the playoffs. And I think if you look at the title of this, this is why I think we're going to be 10-7, because I think we haven't even talked about defenses, but I think that this offense is primed to show up and show out. And I will end on this note. Big shout out to Zach G for the $1.99 super chat. Says the Beard has some good Coca-Cola. It's just Celsius. We're still waiting for that sponsorship, by the way.
I don't think he was talking about a drink, but go ahead.
I know that. But I have high expectations. And I will tell you that ESPN, I put this on my Twitter. One of the writers for ESPN, I believe the gentleman's name is Mike Clay, had the Washington Commanders as the lowest scoring offense projection in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
I think that I forget the total was like 300 points or something like that. It ended up being like 18.6 points a game. So I think that is, speaking of criminal, I think that is absolutely criminal to think that with Eric
Not
Bieniemy.
really. Not really. I don't like this absolute criminal thing. I
you
want to remove
think-
that. Let me tell you why. We saw the strength of schedule.
Okay.
Washington 24th, 8th most difficult schedule in the league. New quarterback. Y'all only scored 18 points a game last year.
Okay, but do you really think that that the Arizona Cardinals are gonna score more points than the Washington Commanders?
Yeah.
How, Sway?
I think that they're going to be the product of a lot of being down in a lot of games, and they're going to get some garbage time touchdowns out there to kind of round things out. Where y'all are going to be in close, low-scoring games, banking on your defense, holding you down, but not according to your stats, though. Your stats say y'all are going to be in shootouts, 35-31, Washington.
I think we average more than 21 or more points per game this season offensively.
I mean, we shall see. I just don't think that it's there's sense behind that take. You know, there's sense behind that take, I feel like. Of course, there are other teams, but those other teams that you think are going to score less than y'all have easier opposition as far as the schedule goes.
I will give you that as a
good reasoning behind it. I think your receptions are just ridiculous. The receptions is the number, because to me, Dotson is a guy that's going to stretch the field. You know, at this, we talked about this a little bit. His yards per catch here is too low for me. You know, sitting around 12-ish, I believe, or something like that. I think that the yards per catch for him is going to be more like 16, 15. He's going to be a guy that's going to make the big plays. That's what we've seen throughout his career when healthy. And you got to look at the injury bug for him, too. He's a guy that stature, not that big. 99 receptions. There were only 10 wide receivers in the entire league that had over 99 receptions last year. So you're looking at a guy to be a top 10 wide receiver by the end of the year. I just think it's you're thinking optimistic, and it's okay for you as a Commanders fan because y'all haven't really won big in a long time since 2012. And I know what that's like, you know, being that the Giants, for us, it was 2011. So I know what that's like. I just think you might be a little too high on the receptions. And a little too high on the yards, too, I think. I'd go more. I still think your offense is going to funnel through Terry McLaurin. I think he'll have somewhere around these numbers, and Dotson will be in that 900 type of range, something like that. But not too bad. I wouldn't call it criminal. But it's not too bad.
I think we have two 1,000-yard receivers, though.
Yeah, there was how many of those last year? 2 teams, I think, 2 or 3 teams.
Yeah,
two teams.
I think it was just the Eagles, actually, right?
No, the Miami Dolphins did it as well, too, with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They damn near put up 3,000. I think they might have put up 3,000 together. Yeah, they definitely went crazy with it. So we're going to definitely get y'all out of here in time. I just wanted to show the Beard and everybody in the chat, the whole family, this one little, or at least speak on this graphic a little bit. So PFT, which is Chris Sims and Mike Florio, they put out a power rankings list today, and I honestly thought they had the New York Giants a little bit too high. They had us at number 11, and they had the Washington Commanders all the way down to number 20, not quite 24, I believe is what you said.
ESPN has us at 28.
Is where ESPN. I think they were a little bit generous to y'all and a little generous to us. So the Cowboys are ranked number 10. The Philadelphia Eagles ranked number 3. But it's the teams around there that I think are a little interesting. So from 7 to 15, I'll give you real quick. They have the Jaguars at 7, the Bills at 8, the Seahawks at 9, Cowboys at 10, Giants at 11. And these 3 teams behind are a little interesting to me. They got the Ravens at 12. They have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 13, who I think is a little too high. The Detroit Lions at 14. And then they have the Los Angeles Chargers all the way down at 15. I think that the Giants fall a bit under the Chargers, but possibly because of the way that the AFC is just, the cards are dealt as far as quarterbacks go over there. Maybe that's why they have the Chargers ranked so low. But for me, I like to be a realistic Giants fan. I think the Chargers are a better team than us right now. I think the Ravens are a better team than us right now as well. Even though we beat them last year, I still think they're a better team than us. And then around y'all, you know, they got the Bears at 21 and the Commanders at 20. I'm higher on the Bears this year than most people, but I think the Bears are a better team than the Commanders going into the year with all those defensive upgrades they did, bringing in DJ Moore. They've done so much to just revamp that roster. I think they're going to be a better team. And then also, looking at the Saints at 24, especially with the strength of schedule, I think those are interesting. But how you feel about the Commanders being sitting there at 20?
I think that's fair. I think I mean, obviously, this I have this high expectation for the Commanders, but I think most people in this profession probably, want to err on the side of caution when it comes to, predicting a team with, the history of Washington, with a guy who's only played one game, and, the question marks around Chase Young and the Ron Rivera and Bieniemy coming in and just all the change. And I can understand that, so I think I'd put them probably in that 15 to 20 range. I think that's fair for the Commanders.
Oh, that'd be way too high. You guys lost to teams like the Browns last year, and they have them beneath y'all as well.
And I think the Browns are going to be a surprise team this year. I think that AFC North is absolutely
They need Watson to get back to his real playing style, and I thought against y'all was really the only time we saw that from Deshaun Watson last year. He had a 3-touchdown game against Washington last year. But he's got to play consistent football. Outside of that, I think they got everything pretty right. Starting from the bottom of this list, they have the Cardinals last, Colts, Texans, Rams, Raiders, Bucks, Falcons, Panthers. I think that the Washington Commanders are better than all those teams. I'd put y'all above the Broncos, but I'd have y'all around 22.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are probably a little bit higher, and not necessarily because of the Giants. I just, like you pointed out, I love the Ravens this year. I think that and I think the Chargers are way down there. I think that they're a little bit high on Seattle. I would even put
and I like Seattle. I mean, you brought in JSN. They were already a playoff team last year. I thought they just got the bad draw. And a lot of people forget, man, they were hanging with the 49ers for 3 quarters in that game. Then finally they kind of pushed things away from the Seattle Seahawks. But I like the Seahawks. Defensively, I think they got some question marks for sure. But offensively, they got all the weapons they need to be able to score enough points to win. 9 might be a little high. I'd probably have the Cowboys above the Seahawks. And I would have the Ravens above the Seahawks as well. So I'd probably have the Seahawks around like 11. I'd have the Giants probably around 15. And then I'd have teams like they have the Packers at 16. I mean, I think Jordan Love is going to be serviceable.
And that's high for me.
Yeah, but there's no reason to be high on the Packers. I feel like even if the quarterback is solidified, they just don't have it all put together over there. Wide receivers very young. And guys who are you don't really have a number 1 over there. Tight end is kind of like defensively still going to keep you in games, but not a great defense. How much gas does Jones have left? I like the other power back that they have over there too, A.J. Dillon. But last year he was in struggle mode, man. His yards per carry went way down last year. So I do think that these are going to be adjusted. This is entering week 1. Once we get to see week 1, it's going to change. Everybody's opinions are going to change. You're really going to get to see these teams live in action, and we're just 2 days away from that. So I mean, that's very exciting as far as a fan for me. And to have our game on Sunday night is awesome. I'm so hyped because I get to watch all football all day long, red zone every game, divvy up my quad box over here and whatnot, and have all these games up, and then finally go into Sunday night with a bunch of jitters in a game that I'm not confident in. It's a home game, though, so that does help us out a little bit. But nonetheless, it's going to be extremely exciting going into Thursday night. Make sure y'all pull up on Thursday, same time, same place, here at Awthentik and The Beard. We're going to be doing our preview show, breaking down all the 3 matchups in the NFC East. We got the Cowboys taking on the Giants, the Commanders taking on the Cardinals, and we got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the New England Patriots, which a lot of people think the Patriots are going to upset. I've been hearing some homies in my group chat saying Patriots are going to upset the Eagles, but I don't see that one coming. No. But any last words before we get out of here? We send everybody off.
No, just make sure you guys go check out the show we're going to raid you guys to, just because, we'll make sure we support everybody in the community. It's going to be some dope guests on that show. There should be a link coming in the chat. Make sure you guys are bookmarking, the next show that's going to be up on Thursday. Make sure you guys spread the word. It's so great to have you all back here in the building with us. It's exciting. Don't forget Sunday parlay. We're going to be giving out some picks for the games and some fantasy players. So it's just the vibe is here. I'm hoping for a good season for both of our teams. We're still waiting for that season of Washington and the Giants in the playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Together.
We almost had it last year.
Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But I am excited about the possibility this year. So big shout out to everybody in the chat. We appreciate all the love and all the support.
Most definitely. I see Monique. She was saying, doesn't the Cowboys play well in New York? The Cowboys just play well, period, against the New York Giants. They are 10-2 since Dak Prescott. joined your team, and those 2 losses happened in Dak Prescott's rookie year. So we owe y'all for sure. Hoping my Giants can handle business. Y'all know what it is over here at Awthentik and The Beard, man. We appreciate all of y'all coming through, rocking with us. Your presence is greatly appreciated. Make sure you go over to New York Revival and tell them that Awthentik and The Beard sent you. Join that chat with a bicep and a hashtag AATB. I just put the link in the chat one time, man. We definitely, again, want to say thank you to all of y'all, the whole family that have been rocking with us from day one, and all the new subscribers from the videos that we put out over the summer that are now joining us, getting to see our lives. We're going to be live 4 days a week during the season. Man, yo, I'm in the middle of a move right now. When I get situated and settled into my new crib, I might go live every damn day. I might start up that night series that my man Chris Peace was talking about. We gonna see. But y'all know what it is over here at Awthentik and The Beard. We end every show the exact same way, man. Y'all keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams, because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT, my man Combat Jack, one time. And y'all be good, man. Enjoy these 2 sleeps. And on Thursday, pull up here at 7 o'clock. We'll be here doing those previews, and then we're going to watch the Kansas City Chiefs take on the Detroit Lions, man. Y'all be good. Appreciate y'all. Peace.
Spike don't care.